It is time for our Week 4 college football Saturday selections. A loaded schedule awaits us, so let's jump right into things with a noon Eastern kickoff over on ABC as the Michigan State Spartans travel to Evanston to take on the Northwestern Wildcats. Michigan State is a 9.5-point road favorite in this football game. Northwestern has won 3 in a row in this series, including last year's win out in East Lansing. But for me, coming into this football game, a lot of it's going to come down to which offense can make, one or two more plays than the other offense, because I expect a low-scoring defensive football game. Michigan State's offense wasn't great last week against Arizona State, but I think a lot of that had to do with just how great Arizona State's defense is, and also that Michigan State's offense isn't quite what we saw when they were playing MAC teams, but I don't think they were as bad as we saw last weekend. I think this game kind of, helps their offense a little bit because Northwestern's defense, while good, is not quite at Arizona State's level. And Northwestern's offense has not been great either. You have Hunter Johnson, the Clemson transfer at quarterback. He's been up and down a little bit this season in terms of accuracy. And a game against this Michigan State defense isn't exactly what the doctor would order to get back on track. So for those reasons, I think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive slugfest. And I'm going to give a slight edge to Michigan State. I like Sparty on the road by a field goal. Continuing on with another noon Eastern kickoff, this one over on ESPNU. The Cal Golden Bears travel to Oxford to take on the Ole Miss Rebels. Mississippi is a 2.5-point home favorite. Remember, Cal won the only meeting between these two programs back in 2017. For me, this game is going to come down to how will Cal's offense be able to play. We all know Cal has a terrific defense. We saw what they did to Washington up in Seattle in week 2. But their offense over this season and last season has only scored over 24 points against FBS level competition twice. And I think that might be a problem in this game. While Cal's defense can kind of keep it close, I think Ole Miss's offense, with Matt Corral, the redshirt freshman quarterback, starting to find his footing early in the season, the running game starting to develop as well, I think Ole Miss is going to be able to score a little bit against this Cal defense. I'm not sure Cal's offense will be able to score that much. And I also think with this game being an 11 a.m. Central kickoff and Cal having to travel, all the way across the country for this game, I think that also plays into Ole Miss's hands. So I like the Rebels to knock off a ranked Cal team by 4 points in this football game. Moving on now to a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one over on ABC. The UCF Knights travel to take on the Pitt Panthers. The Knights are an 11-point road favorite in this football game. Remember, they whacked Pittsburgh last year by 31. And this game for me is going to come down to UCF's speed at receiver. Pitt and Pat Narduzzi like to leave their corners out on islands and man-to-man, one-on-one coverage. And UCF has the speed outside to really take advantage of that and put a lot of pressure on those corners. Dylan Gabriel, the true freshman quarterback for UCF, has been sharp so far this season. And I think UCF is going to be able to score points in this football game. And Pitt's offense hasn't been great so far. So I like the Golden Knights on the road by 2 touchdowns over the Pitt Panthers. Continuing on with another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one on ABC as well. You have the Washington Huskies traveling to Provo, Utah to take on the BYU Cougars. The Huskies are a 6.5-point road favorite in this football game. Remember, they beat BYU by 28 last year up in Seattle. For me, this game comes down to can Washington take care of the football. You saw BYU beat USC last week, but a lot of that had to do with USC, turning the ball over. They had 3 interceptions. And I think, a Chris Peterson coached team just won't make those types of mistakes. I also think BYU comes in, after 2 emotional wins, the game against Tennessee, the game against Tennessee and USC. And I think, those emotional wins, were big for this program, but also, did they really win those games, or did Tennessee and USC, lose those games? And I think that is a fair question. So while I think BYU is a good team, I just think Washington, limits their mistakes and comes out and plays a good game. The Huskies seem to be a little bit more focused after the loss to Cal. I like the Huskies on the road by 9 points over the BYU Cougars. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff, this one over on CBS. The Auburn Tigers travel to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. The Aggies are a 3.5-point home favorite in this football game. An interesting stat and it's kind of a weird one, is Texas A&M is 0-3 at home against the Auburn Tigers since joining the SEC. We'll see if they can finally get that win. For Auburn in this football game, this is going to be the first road game of Bo Nix's career. The true freshman quarterback had that big comeback against Oregon, but really so far this season he's been really up and down, and that could be an issue going up against this Texas A&M team that has a really good defense. As you know, coordinator Mike Elko always does a tremendous job. They had a good game against Clemson, but I feel like this is going to be a low-scoring game. You have an Auburn defense that's stout, a Texas A&M defense that's stout. You know Auburn has those issues. Will Seth Williams, the receiver, play? He has injury issues. Will Derek Brown, the star defensive tackle, play? He's also dealing with injuries of his own. But if Derek Brown and Seth Williams play, I think those are two really important pieces for the Tigers. But if they play, something in my gut is just telling me that Auburn is going to find a way to win this football game. So while I can't really point to something on the field to say that they're going to win it because of this specific matchup, I just like their defense so much, and I think, they'll make one or two plays offensively late, to hit a game-winning field goal. So I'm going with Auburn on the road over Texas A&M, 20-17. Moving on now to a 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff. This one over on ESPN. The Oregon Ducks hit the road to take on the Stanford Cardinal. The Ducks are a 10-point road favorite, and that is interesting because David Shaw, the Stanford head coach, has never lost at home as an underdog. Keep that in the back of your mind for this game. For me, this game comes down to Oregon really has a star quarterback in Justin Herbert who looks like he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And for Stanford, the last 2 weeks, their defensive secondary has been shredded by true freshman quarterback in Keaton Slovis of USC. And then you had Dylan Gabriel of UCF last weekend picking them apart. And now they're going to have to face Justin Herbert. I just think that's a bad matchup for them. Their offense has been way too up and down to believe that they'll be able to keep pace with Oregon. And Oregon also comes into this football game, there's a little bit of an element of revenge on their mind after blowing that 24-7 lead at home against Stanford last season. That was an emotional loss for them. I think they come out in this game focused, ready to prove to people that they're still a playoff contender despite the loss to Auburn early in the season. So I like Oregon on the road to beat Stanford by 14 points decisively. Continuing on with another primetime matchup, this one at 7:30 Eastern over on ABC. The Oklahoma State Cowboys are a 6.5-point road underdog as they travel to take on the Texas Longhorns in Austin. Oklahoma State has won 4 in a row over the Longhorns, including that 3-point win last year out in Stillwater in primetime. For me, this game is going to be about exciting matchup between two highly explosive offenses. For Oklahoma State, their quarterback Spencer Sanders, the redshirt freshman quarterback, he's been a little bit up and down, but Chuba Hubbard, the running back, has been fantastic so far this season, and they have a superstar at receiver in Tylan Wallace. Meanwhile, for Texas, Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. He has a bevy of playmakers around him on offense. Their defensive secondary, though, has struggled, which kind of gives me reason to believe, Oklahoma State can find their way into this football game and keep it close. That's what I think happens. I think it's a fourth quarter game. I like Texas, though, to pull this one out late. I like the Longhorns at home, but only by a field goal, as Oklahoma State gives them a tremendous challenge in the Big 12 opener for both teams. Another massive matchup on this weekend. It's a noon Eastern kickoff on Fox as the Michigan Wolverines travel to Madison, Wisconsin to take on the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin, of course, is a 3.5-point home favorite. Something that's another interesting little tidbit in this game. Jim Harbaugh, the Michigan head coach, is 0-6 as an underdog during his time with the Wolverines. Could that be something? That won't be something why they win or lose this game, but it's just something, to file away in the back of your mind. But for me, this game, it just comes down to the fact that, Wisconsin's defense, well, they've been fantastic. They haven't allowed a point yet so far this season. This game will represent a significant step up in competition. For Michigan, I know they've had struggles so far this season offensively, but Shea Patterson, their starting quarterback, it seems like he's over that oblique issue. He's healthy now. John Runyon, the starting left tackle, is back to make his season debut, which is really big considering he might be their best offensive lineman. And this Michigan offensive line has struggled so far this season. I think his return will be a big boost. We'll see if Donovan Peoples-Jones, the star receiver, will play. I mean, if he plays, that's just going to be another tough matchup for Wisconsin to cover out on the outside. So that's another, spot for Michigan. So while Wisconsin seems like, the trendier pick coming in this game, I think this healthier Michigan team realizes that they have to put up a strong performance in this game. They're going to be up for this game. And I just think, Michigan's starting to get healthier. They've had the bye week to regroup offensively. So I'm going with Michigan on the road to knock off Wisconsin. It's going to be a low-scoring defensive game, but I like the Wolverines 23-20 over the Badgers. And now to the game of the week, a primetime showdown between the hedges as the Notre Dame Fighting Irish travel to Athens, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. It is an 8 p.m. Eastern kickoff on CBS with the Bulldogs a 14-point home favorite in this game. And for me, this game just comes down to Georgia's strengths kind of played Notre Dame's weakness. What I mean by that is Georgia is a team with one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in all of college football. They have a deep stable of running backs led by DeAndre Swift, who's a fantastic player. And Jake Fromm, their quarterback, is not going to make many mistakes. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, their run defense, struggled in the first half against Louisville in the season opener. And while their coaching staff was able to make halftime adjustments to get them to play better in the second half, you just worry that with the Notre Dame having those poor performances against big teams in the past, that if Georgia gets out to a big lead early, will the halftime adjustments even matter? Will their team psyche be so drained that, it just doesn't really make a difference? That's my worry in this game, and I just think Georgia is the better football team. So while I'm going to be rooting for Notre Dame, to keep this close, because a close game in primetime between these two playoff contenders, would be a real treat to watch, I just feel like Georgia comes out in this football game, gets a big lead early, and their defense just kind of carries it from there. So I like Georgia to knock off the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 34-17 in primetime on Saturday night.